All right, and we are live. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow Show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others, impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and life, and you are open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth expert Jason Hull, the founder of Open Potion, Gather Kudos, Thunder Local, and of course, DoorGrow. Now let's get into the show. So today I'm hanging out with Ethan Lieber of Latchel. And Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm super pumped to be here. I'm part of the DoorGrow Club on Facebook. So I'm psyched and pumped to be talking to some of your listeners, and hope we can get some good information for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit, tell us high level, like what is Latchel for those listening? And then I'd love to get into the backstory.
Yeah. So at a high level, what Latchel is, we help property managers with maintenance. So we have kind of two levels. One is your basic 24/7 and after hours emergency maintenance, where we take all the tenant calls. We have actually an in-house team of property managers that will troubleshoot anything that might be an emergency. And then, of course, dispatching for it. It might be your vendor network, or it could be one of the Latchel partner vendors. And then the second thing we do is extend that to coordinate all work orders. So that could be non-emergency, could be even unit turns, could be getting estimates or bids and things like that. So that's at a high level what we do. Part of the reason we do it is to help property managers focus on growth. That when we actually started the company, the thing I kept hearing from property managers was, well, we're kind of capped out right now because I couldn't bring in more units because it would be too much time spent on maintenance. And so we want to solve that problem.
Awesome. I mean, it is a problem. Property managers get to, a certain door count, and then they think, oh man, I need to hire people or in order to handle more, or they're doing it all themselves initially, or they've got one maintenance coordinator handling hundreds of properties, trying to figure this out. And that person is about to break a lot of times. Like they're stressed out.
Yeah, you can get stuck in this place where you either have to hire, and now you're really hurting your margin because hiring is expensive, or you're growing and you just can't keep up, and now you're backlogged on work orders, and that's not good for anybody. It's not good for your business. It's not good for tenants. It's not good for the property owners. So it's a big problem, and we build things and solutions and services to try and fix that.
Yeah. So Ethan, give us the backstory. How did you get into running this property management maintenance solution? Did you wake up when you were like 8 years old or 6 years old and you're like, I want to do this is what I want to do? Or how did you get into this? There's got to be a story here.
Not quite. I think like a lot of property management entrepreneurs, sometimes you just kind of go with the tide and you get caught up in something and you look around and you're like, wow, how did I end up here? And that's kind of what happened to me, actually. I was working full time in software and mobile applications for the lead gen space. So basically, I was building applications that connected contractors and homeowners, all pure software solutions. And my co-founder, Will Gordon, who's our CLO, called me one day, and he kind of pulled me into the property management space. Now, my family had always had a history in real estate. My father was a real estate agent, so I was familiar with real estate, how property management worked. But Will was in this position where he had just taken over managing his property management company from his family. So this is a small company, about 30 properties. At the time, he was actually also working full time at Amazon, and he basically contacted me to see if I knew any solutions that would help him with the maintenance side of things, because that's what kept pulling him out of his day to day. When we went looking, we didn't really find anything out there to help. And this was back in early 2016. The landscape's a bit different now, of course. So we went actually and talked to about 50 different other property management companies. Some of these were really small, 5 to 20 units, kind of fresh startup property management companies. And then we talked to a few large ones. The biggest one was 4,000 units. And this was in the Southern California area. What kept coming up in talking to these property managers was that maintenance was either their biggest cost, their biggest time suck, or it was what was keeping them from actually growing their business. Us looking at Will's property management company, it was the same thing. It was maintenance that slowed everything down and pulled him out from his day to day.
Yeah.
And you can't expect to grow a company when you're stuck in the operations piece every day.
Yeah. Biggest cost, biggest time suck, and biggest preventer of growth. That's a pretty strong problem to solve. And usually in property management, you've got the maintenance side and then you've got the leasing side. Mm-hmm. And I think every property management business owner needs a solution on both of these. They need these two major pieces to their puzzle besides just their property management back office or whatever tool they're using, because usually those don't do either of those very well.
Yeah, you have your big softwares that do sort of that accounting ledger, their system of records, but what's sort of missing from that landscape is the piece that actually makes your operation more efficient, leasing and maintenance being the two big ones. In a way, when we talk about these things about, well, how do you do operations more efficiently? Really what we're talking about is how do you build a scalable property management practice. And what scalability means, there's sort of like a stress test and I'll give. And so any of your listeners can actually use this to start thinking about scalability. And that's this. Imagine your property management company suddenly grew 2x tomorrow. So if you have 100 properties today, what if you had 200 properties under management tomorrow? What would break in your business? Those things that would break, those are the things that are probably not scalable. And when you think about the growth of your business, that can actually come from two sides. I think one comes from the acquisition side, is the way you acquire your customers scalable. And I think actually, Jason, you work a lot on this, right? Which is how do you get scalable lead generation? How do you build a good site to bring those in? And it ends with, well, how do you build a scalable way to onboard, new owners? So when a new owner comes to you with 10 properties, you want, some process for onboarding them, setting expectations of the service and doing that efficiently. That's the front end of scalability. Then there's this back end of scalability, which is the whole operation. If you have an amazing front end and you're just, bringing in new customers like crazy and you're going from 100 units to 1,000 units by the end of the year, well, there's going to be this big problem if your operation can't handle that growth. So you need to be scalable on both sides. Really where we focus is on making maintenance scalable so that you can grow without worrying about hurting your margin. And you can actually grow without worrying about not being able to fulfill on the promise you're giving to your customers.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's kind of how you got into this. And so tell us a little bit more about Latchel and how it differs from some of the other solutions out there. So
Sure.
There's like Homey, there's Keep, Property Meld, and there's other ones coming into the space. And then some of these, AppFolio has their own in-house maintenance stuff, in their software, and there's some of these sort of things out there. And so explain how you kind of fit in the marketplace and how you differ, because I'm sure everybody's wondering, how does this compare?
Yeah. Let me start from maybe a sort of philosophical standpoint, which I think kind of set us apart right at the beginning of starting this company. And I'm going to actually talk about our first day running shop. So, and it sort of is what led us to be what we are today. The first thing we ever did when we launched service, we had one property manager that was willing to say, hey, cool, I'll give you guys a shot. Let's see if you can make this like maintenance thing easier for me. The first thing we ever had, it was just a pure technology solution. And what it did is it automated texts to vendors and to tenants to like get something scheduled. And actually the first version we had, the property manager would put a work order in our system and it just texted the vendor the work order, said, hey, here it is. And then they'd pick a time and then it texted the tenant and said, hey, here's the time. If like that's not good for you, like let us know and we'll switch it. So I'll just call her Sally. So Sally's the property manager that kind of said, hey, cool, let's try this out. It was 8 a.m. East Coast time. So I'm on the West Coast, by the way. And at this point, it was just me and my co-founder, Will. We're on the West Coast. It's 5 a.m. for us, 8 a.m. for her. She sends this work order. We wake up at 8 a.m. with an email that's just like, hey, this sucks. Like, I'm done. I'm done testing this. We're like, well, what happened? Well, what happened is she put the first work order in and it sent some texts. And then the tenant was like, well, wait, I have a question. And the process just stopped. It just stopped right there. And we kind of realized technology is an amazing support to a really good process, but it can't be the process. And so what we made the decision as a company to not just have a software, but to have an actual human-based service that was backed by software. So we sort of remodeled the company, and what we are, I like to describe us as a tech-backed service. So when you sign up for Latchel, you're actually getting human teams working for you, but they use our technology, and our technology syncs with our human process to kind of create this really efficient harmony. And so some of the differences between the way we look at these problems and some of the ways other companies look at these problems, we look at it from a more holistic perspective of, can we actually completely offload the maintenance issue from a property manager completely? And that doesn't mean, so we look at it from maybe a different perspective from a company that builds pure software. So if a company is building pure software for a property manager, you know, that property manager needs to build some process and procedures to work well with that software. So they still need maintenance coordinators potentially, or they still need property managers that are going to get their hands dirty with maintenance, but the software helps them become more efficient. We kind of took an approach where we said, well, we're going to do all of it. And that meant we needed to have the human teams to do all of it, plus the software to make them efficient. So there's like this, but maybe a bit of a philosophical difference in the way we do things versus, like you mentioned, Property Meld. I think Property Meld is like the best solution for the company looking for that software to help their team be more efficient. But, you know, Property Meld doesn't necessarily mean you can completely forget about maintenance. Of course, you know, if something goes wrong, you still need someone there. So really one of the main difference there is we just have the human team to back you up so that we can take more of that time off your plate. So really it's sort of like choosing between running shoes and maybe cowboy boots. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you choose the one that fits what you want out of your business and where your company's heading. A lot of people also compare us to like Appfolio's contact center. And whenever we're compared to like a contact center, I usually focus on the couple things that differentiate us. And it comes around our human process. So we kind of talked a little bit about scalability, but we had to build our company in a way where if we 10x the size of the company tomorrow, we can still run, which is like, in a way, a big mental problem, right? You really have to think about that. If I 10 times the amount of units, how do I run efficiently still? And so for us, what we found worked best was a 3-step process. Whenever a call comes in, the first, we're just going to screen that call to know, is it an emergency or not? And we're really just looking to see is this a possible emergency? So any like leak, we're going to say, okay, that might be an emergency. And then we have a second step where we send any possible emergencies to a human team of, property managers that we have in-house. So we actually put a real property manager on the line with a tenant. Shooting is actually, I think, one of the biggest advantages you get going with Latchel, because if I'll give that favorite story here. We had a tenant call in, only toilet in the apartment wasn't working. They were flushing it. It just wasn't flushing. So they're pushing the lever and nothing's flushing.
Right.
Troubleshooter of ours has them take the top of the toilet off. They look inside and they're like, oh, the chain to the flapper is broken in the middle. So it's like, okay, the only toilet's not flushing. But I walk them through finding a paper, using that paper to relink it. And at the end of the call, you hear the flushing the toilet. So like that's a pretty cool advantage you get, where that meant we didn't have to go dispatch a plumber at 9 p.m. when it's going to be really expensive because it's after hours. We could defer that to this day because we got the toilet, and it's cheaper to send a plumber out hours than at night. Of course, like part of this is the third step, which is if we can't actually troubleshoot, get a contractor or a vendor out. One way we do it is we go down your preferred vendor list. The second way we can do it, and this is what's been really helpful for a lot of startup property managers or smaller companies without built out vendor networks. And it's also nice if you're expanding to new areas or expanding rapidly and your existing vendor network doesn't have the bandwidth. Latchel has actually built a lot of vendor partnerships, and we can send out vendors that we've partnered with to go do these jobs when yours don't have bandwidth, which is nice because it goes back to that scalability where now your vendor network won't be the limiting factor in your ability to get maintenance done. So those are like really the two things that kind of make us stand out, I think, from your typical contact center or call center. Yes. I mean, that, and aside from like this split process has actually allowed us to do these things more efficiently. So we don't have hold times like you might have with like Appfolio.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of going, focusing on the human side first. And I think there's such a temptation in, current times, modern day, whatever you want to call it, that everybody's trying to get towards some sort of level of automation in which they can eliminate human beings. And it's tempting because we're like, man, computers, if they could just do everything, it'd be so much cheaper. But there's sometimes an art to things like maintenance. Sometimes there's an art to things like leasing and coordination. Sometimes there's an art to, troubleshooting and solving problems. And it's really hard to create the complexity necessary to mimic a human brain.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's kind of interesting, actually. I like using this example from chess, but the best chess players are actually, they're not grandmasters. It's regular people paired with a computer. So a regular person paired, so obviously you need to know the rules of chess, but as long as you know the rules of chess and you're kind of like just an average guy like me, and you get paired up with a computer, you will actually win at chess more often than a grandmaster or a grandmaster paired with a computer. So there's this kind of beautiful thing you get when you can combine the expertise and human mind with technology. And that's really when you look at scalability and how do I do a better job with maintenance, with leasing, really with any company process, you want to be looking at how do I make my people better and faster at what they're doing? How do I use technology to reduce inaccuracies that they might make? And so that's kind of Latchel's perspective on all this. We're building a lot of software and a lot of technology, and that's to make our human team a lot better and more efficient at what we do. And it also allows us to kind of pass that margin and cost savings back to property managers. I think one of the unique things about property management is it's inherently a tight margin business. And so you need to do everything you can to do things cost effectively because you want to keep healthy margins. So we kind of try and make our business structured in a way where, we feel like we're charging the price that keeps our customers at healthy margins.
So one of the things we're all about at DoorGrow is transformation. So what sort of results have you or transformations have you noticed among your early adopters in getting Latchel implemented and bringing this into their business and being able to offload some of this maintenance load with phone calls and and
Yeah, so there's two examples I like talking about. We had a customer join, this is actually a few months ago. I'll call him Jack. When he started, he had 25 units. And when he started, he joined our 24/7 emergency dispatching service. He was basically worried about just getting flooded with calls. So he wanted to offload the tenant calls and have us do that emergency dispatching that I kind of mentioned earlier. Now, him not having to take these tenant calls and worry about at least the emergency side of maintenance, within 2 months, he had gone from 25 units to 100 units. So he came back to us, right, about 60 days later with 100 units. So he 4x'd in about 2 months. And he had this new problem, which was, I'm a solopreneur. I'm doing this by myself.
Yeah.
I can't handle the non-emergency maintenance anymore. It's at 100 units. So now he's, ramped up to our premium service where we take the coordination for all maintenance work. Now keep in mind, he started with us at 25 units, right? So he didn't have a built out vendor network. So he's really relying on us to be able to give that operational support to him, not only with vendors, but also with the actual coordination. So that's one example that I love using, because I think it's really great for a company that maybe early on, you may be just starting out. It's never too early to start thinking about scalability, because who knows, maybe tomorrow you're going to talk to that property owner that has 50 homes or 50 units. And now all of a sudden you're going to be in a panic. Well, how do I manage that? The second example is actually a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. I'll call this property manager Jane. She's also actually in the Bay Area. Came to us when she was at 1,500 units. And this was about like 95% single family home, so some small multiplex, but mostly single family. So 1,500 homes. She came to us for after hours only emergency dispatching service. So she already had some processes in place for her daytime team, but that on-call process was just crushing them. Not only was it taking property managers out of their sleep, so they'd come to work just wrecked, but at 1,500 units, you're getting so many after hours calls at that point that it's not scalable to just have people on a rotation on call. They're just going to get too tired out. So she was looking at us to help with that. In less than a year, they've grown to 3,000 units. So that's a bigger scale, and I'd like to think that partially they were able to do that because they have Latchel handling their after hours. But it also speaks to their ability to create scalable practices for their, daytime teams, because they're doing all the daytime stuff and non-emergency maintenance in-house. So they have really good processes for that, and they're using us to supplement for those, after hours emergencies.
Cool. So Ethan, one of the questions that's coming up in my mind that I think a lot of people listening might have is they hear about this and they go, okay, that's great, but I'm curious about this vendor network, because is this vendor network, are they in my market? Do they cover every area? And a lot of property managers are really careful about giving something up. They're control freaks a lot of times, especially smaller. Yeah. The solopreneurs are control freaks, and they eventually, if they want to grow, they realize they have to give up everything that got them to that point of success. They have to give up maintenance coordination. They have to start hiring team members as they build out. So if they're going to give this up to you guys, so I want you to touch on that. How do you make them feel safe, and how can they hand this to you effectively? And then this vendor network, do you cover everywhere? And it's a good fit for that.
Yeah. I'll speak to both of those actually, and I'll kind of bring one of the latter points you mentioned back to how important delegation is when you're growing. you can only grow your business so far without a team. And you need to, as you're growing, of course, and part of being a business owner is learning how to do a good job delegating. And that means sometimes giving up control, right? If you're controlling everything, that means you're micromanaging, and that means you're really putting a cap on your ability to grow and scale. So to a certain extent, you have to be able to delegate and let go of control of things.
Yeah, I would go even further than that. I would say your ability to grow and scale is directly connected to your ability to offload, period. Connected. Yeah. So in business owners, that's the hardest thing to do. A lot of them have this mindset that I can do it, so I should do it because I'll save money. And if your number one priority is to save money, then you will always be your best employee because you're the cheapest one. Because
you're probably also
$0 an hour in some instances. So I'm totally in alignment there. You need to be willing to offload.
Exactly.
So it helps property managers listening feel safe about offloading to Latchel or offloading maintenance coordination.
Yeah, well, and I'll talk about it in two ways, because when you want to build just your company to be scalable, and this is whether or not you're a Latchel customer and using us for maintenance, when you delegate things, part of scalability is having clear process and procedure. And that means documenting things in a way that your team can understand, because you're also going to be delegating to your team, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're at 1,000 units, you're going to have more employees than when you're at 100. At 100, you could probably do it yourself, not at 1,000. And you need to have your team on the same page. At Latchel, we document everything. We have process procedures for everything. And we actually talk about this stuff every week to get feedback from our team. Is this process working? Can we, improve it? And we improve it together and then follow the new process. And you want to be doing the same things. And that allows you to let go a little bit. So let go of some of that control, but do it in a way where you're not just sending people out to figure things out for themselves. They have these bounds. And so at Latchel,
talking about theory, this is like how you guys run Latchel internally, or are you talking also about you're taking the maintenance processes and building these out, and people that come in and subscribe to your service get access to these?
So both, actually. I'm talking I guess we could talk about it at a theoretical level. This is just what you want to do to be able to unlock a lot of growth at an operational perspective. And we actually do this internally. But part of that means when we work with any customer on taking over this maintenance, it means building the boundaries that Latchel is going to work under. And it also means setting a clear expectation. Here's what Latchel does, and here's what you will continue doing. Now, part of those boundaries, and this is kind of how it fits into the vendor piece that you had asked about, we have to set budget limits, right? We need budget limits on things, and those, it's a very clear boundary for us to know, okay, here's a budget limit on a non-emergency job. We can't send a vendor out or have them do work if it's going to be over that budget limit. And that gives property managers the ease of knowing, okay, cool, it's not going to go over that. And they have a duty to their owners to stay within budget limits too. So it's things like these that we document and build out, and we need to be flexible enough to have this fit for any type of property manager, because everyone works a little bit differently. Now we have some standard processes too that we also try to kind of sync with the process of our customers, because when we're aligned, that's when we're doing our best work. Now, on the vendor side, I think one of the trickiest things for any property manager is building a vendor network that's also going to be in alignment with their maintenance processes. Because the worst thing that's going to happen is like you work out a deal with one of your preferred vendors where, hey, we're going to give you this stuff and here's the budget limit, and half the stuff you send them is suddenly not done a week later. Or they're sending back now invoices that are over the budget limit. So part of what kind of we've had to do as a company is build a lot of these strict boundaries for the vendors that we work with. Of course, there's sort of this vetting period we have with any vendor, and that helps. Of course, you need to make sure vendors, they're licensed, bonded, insured if they have to be in your state. So that's all part of like the normal things we have to do with our vendor network. But we also like looking for sort of we make it a policy to look for the extra things that these vendors are coming off referrals from us, that they've done work from us before. It's very rare that we're going to go out and assign someone brand new. But it sometimes does happen where you get an emergency that comes in, something needs to get done quick. We may call out your preferred vendor list. No one's available. We'll call some of those Latchel partners. They're not available. And at the end of the day, you got to get someone out to fix, an overflowing toilet, or you're going to be dealing with property damage. And in those cases, it's important to have process for how you bring in those new vendors that you may have not worked with before, because that process is what's going to kind of control the risk of them be doing something that you don't want them to do. For example, going over budget.
Latchel will help at each of those 3 levels.
Yeah, so we have different processes.
Vendors, the Latchel, partners or your people that you've kind of identified and vetted, and then you'll also go out and maybe help them find somebody if that isn't available.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to do that for companies when they're in kind of more rural areas sometimes. If you're in sort of like a major city, like we generally don't have that problem. But if you're, maybe a couple hours out of a major metro area, it becomes more important for us to have some processes to find brand new people that maybe neither of us have worked with, and to do it in a way where it's going to be controlled, and you're not going to be dealing with a vendor going rogue, going over budget, and things like that.
So building out your Latchel partners network, this is probably an ongoing active thing that your team's always working on then.
Yeah. This is sort of like a big thing we do day in, day out, building those networks. And obviously, I think one of the advantages that Latchel has is we'll have 10, 20, sometimes 30 or more property management companies in a given area. And that means the flow of maintenance work coming through Latchel is pretty massive. And that gives us a lot of power to bring these vendors into our network because they know they're going to get steady work. I mean, one of the best ways you can create positive vendor relationships is by giving them steady work. And I mean, it's sort of like of course, you didn't have to tell me that. But the hard part is, how do you actually do that in practice? One of the things I've sometimes talked about to property managers that aren't thinking about joining Latchel as a customer is to potentially link up with other property managers in their area and actually see if you can share vendors. Because if you can go to vendors with 1,000 units because you've partnered up with other property managers in the area to, send work to these vendors, they're going to be a lot more dedicated to that whole group. And that's kind of, I like to call it like a hack for building vendor networks. So if you weren't going to work with Latchel and you wanted to build a good vendor network, but you felt like you didn't have enough units, that's one way to do it.
How many units do you think a company has to have a really solid vendor network? Because one of the biggest complaints I hear inside our Facebook group, in the DoorGrow Club and among clients, is that vendors may be good for 2 to 3 years max, and then they start doing better and as a business, and then things start to fall apart and their business tends to break and they have to find new vendors, or they're complaining that they may not have enough work to keep that vendor really attached to them or connected or feed them enough business. And then they're running into those issues,
Yeah. I wish there was an exact answer of, hey, X many units and you're good to go.
Yeah.
I mean, most of it is about, well, how much work do you have? And it's also seasonal. I'm sure everyone that's listening is finally starting to breathe a little bit now that summer's over and you're not inundated with turns and maintenance requests.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same for any vendor. They're inundated too during those months. But I think, more importantly, and it doesn't have to be that you're filling up vendors so much that they're overwhelmed. It's that they feel that you've earned their trust. You need enough work being sent to them where they trust you, because if they trust you, they're going to reciprocate that. So if you think about it in terms of earning trust with those vendors, it's flexible how many units you need, but like generally the way you could think about this is you're probably going to get about 3 or 4 non-emergency requests per unit a year. So let's say you have 100 units, you're talking like maybe 300 requests. You divide that by 12. I'm really bad at math. It's something like mid-20s though, right? Mid-20s each month. That might actually be enough to support like a handyman and be maybe not full-time, but at least giving them enough work to be really loyal and dedicated to you. You've earned their trust there, but that's probably not enough to earn the trust and dedication of like an electrician, because out of 25 work orders, you might only be getting like 1 electrician job per month.
And so the more local property management companies that get together and start using your service, probably the bigger benefit to all of them in being part of it. It's almost like a co-op of vendor network in buying power or in retaining good vendors.
Definitely. We actually see like our best areas are those where we're dense with property manager customers, because it gives us more kind of power to build those strong vendor networks. Part of the trick, and we had to really focus on this as we grew as a company, was earning that trust with our vendors when we weren't dense. So we have a lot of programs in place that have allowed that to happen. One of which is sort of guaranteeing payment, which is really amazing for vendors because they're getting stiffed all the time. And they're probably not getting stiffed by your listeners, because your listeners are focused on building ethical, strong businesses. And if you're, stiffing people, that's maybe not the best way to grow a business, right?
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of like landlords out there too that are, calling out to a handyman for a one-time thing and then they're not paying them. So that's a good thing to do too, just building like a strong, earn their trust by making sure they know that they'll be paid, things like that. So we have other processes for building those networks too.
So Ethan, another question. So in the beginning, I was thinking, okay, Latchel maybe is kind of like these maintenance coordination software platforms. And then after talking with you and you mentioning the human side, how does it compare then with the services on that side, like call centers, like super tenders, easy repair?
Sure.
I think some people would have questions about that. Like, how is it different from that side of things?
Yeah, I think we're probably most often compared with companies like that because we solve a lot of the same problems that they do. We just take a different approach to it. We're a company, like I said, that philosophically is building technology and software to make our human process more efficient. And we do that because not only do we want to be able to free you up so you can grow, but we want to be able to keep your margins healthy. So it's really important to us to make sure the cost of our service is priced out in a way that keeps margins healthy. And I know this wasn't part of the question, but just as an example, because I think it's actually going to surprise a lot of people, our after hours emergency dispatching service, we don't have any minimums for one, because we're all about helping companies grow. And that means helping small companies grow. So for after hours, we charge $25 plus 50 cents per month, 50 cents per door per month, right? So if you're at 100 doors, that's only $75 a month. Right. And you're getting full after hours coverage, right? Like that's how you keep margins healthy. For our 24/7, it's the $25 plus $1 per door.
Okay.
So
and your call centers are based where?
Yeah, so I mentioned that 3-step process. So our first step, it's sort of that reception and the screening to see if the request is a possible emergency or not. That's done in Cebu in the Philippines. And so if anyone's used a VA or a Philippines call center, Philippines, it's like an amazing place to get high quality reception customer service work, because they are known for BPO, which is business process. Right. So, when we provide them our software, and they're using our software to go through and screen these things to determine if they're emergencies or not. So when you pair them, they're trained in customer service with our software. We have 100% accuracy on flagging possible emergencies. And we actually kind of oversend to the next step, because not all leaks.
And then what's tier 2 then?
Yeah, so tier 2 is our property management team. So anything that gets flagged as an emergency, they go to this tier 2. These are all real property managers, and they're actually distributed in the US. So they're all US based. We have some though on the West Coast, some Midwest, some in the South, some on the East Coast, really all over the place. And basically what happens whenever a maintenance request gets flagged as a possible emergency, that whole team gets pinged. And the first person available gets on that call with the tenant to troubleshoot. I mentioned that story at the beginning of the toilet. So that team, they're all active property managers actually in the US. Most of them manage anywhere from 20 to 50 homes, but you're getting a real property manager on the line. Now, I talk about scalability. The way we've been able to do this is actually by splitting those duties up that way, because we don't want an expert in home maintenance, like our property managers, on the phone to just screen a call, because that's really expensive, right? We want the experts doing the expert work. And then, of course, we want our customer service team in the Philippines doing the customer service work and reception work. And then the dispatching all happens with our US-based team as well. Anyone on our premium service doing the non-emergency coordination, that actually all happens with our Seattle-based team. So they're all in Seattle. That's where we're headquartered. And that team, they're all former property managers and former contractors, actually. They're not active property managers anymore because they're full-time here at Latchel working for our premium customers, but they all come from property management. And you kind of need that because, and for any of your listeners that have ever tried hiring someone straight out of college to do maintenance coordination, the first 6 months is probably a complete disaster. Like you need someone that knows this stuff and is trained to do a good job with the coordination, to know, does this estimate even make sense, right? So cool. That's why we split it up.
3 levels of expertise that can be involved in the process. Mm-hmm. And then so for the maintenance coordinators, because what's going to happen, here's what's going to happen. Some people are going to watch this, and then the business owner is going to send this to their maintenance coordinator and say, watch this. We should probably do something like this. Let me know what you think. Yeah. So the maintenance coordinators often have their processes. They have their way of doing things. They're scared to give the things up. They're scared to make changes. The entrepreneur is like, woohoo, let's try new shit. Like, let's just do new stuff and let's do it. So for the maintenance coordinators, how do you make their life easier?
Yeah, so that's an awesome question. Earning trust it's actually one of our leadership principles. We actually built our company on a set of 14 leadership principles that actually came from Amazon. And earning trust is one of those. So I talk a lot about being customer obsessed, earning trust, having a bias for action, because they're part of the ways we want to think about building Latchel as a company and the way we want to work with our customers. So for us, it's important to earn that maintenance coordinator's trust. And really, they don't even have to be a maintenance coordinator. It could be like a team of property managers. It could be anyone at the company. Transparency becomes really important. So we actually have online portals that allow the maintenance coordinators or property managers to track all this stuff in an online portal. We also are very transparent in email communication. So when things happen, we send emails. You can also log in and see everything moving in real time. We log all communication in a job log in our portal. So we want everything documented. We want everything visible. And basically, we really want to make it easy for a property manager or maintenance coordinator or an owner to track the progress of all this stuff. So that's really important. What we've done most recently is actually given more control to maintenance coordinators and property managers as well. The way we used to work, you basically have to chat to our team to have them do something. We have like a live chat in the portal, so you can really quickly chat with any of our operators. But and those operators, by the way, they're all former property managers and contractors. But we've recently done something where we've allowed now anyone at the company to log in and to actually give us information in real time about a job or to move the status of a job. So if you hear something first about maybe a job getting complete, you can actually just go in and mark it as complete. Or if you need something canceled, you can just go in and mark it canceled yourself. So it gives a little bit more control. We're not a replacement for a property manager. We're not a replacement for a maintenance coordinator. We're like steroids for your business. You know, well, steroids is probably a bad example. I'll stay away from that. Let's say like
man suit for the maintenance.
Exactly. We're Tony Stark's
superpowers, even though they're a normal person.
Exactly. You're Tony Stark, and Latchel wants to be your Iron Man suit.
There you go. Love it. Yeah. So, well, Ethan, it sounds really cool. So how can people get in touch with you guys? And before we hopped on the call, you were like, hey, I've got an offer. Is it okay if I hand it out? Which the answer is absolutely. So why don't you share that with us and let everyone know how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. So if you want to get in touch with me or my co-founder, Will Gordon, we actually do all consultations with new customers. So I'd say go to latchel.com, LATCHEL.com. There's a big button on our site I think it says schedule a free consultation or schedule a consultation. Click that button and you're going to get like a little form to fill out just to give us some more information about you. And there'll be a little referral box at the bottom. If you write DoorGrow or DoorGrow Show or DoorGrow Live or DoorGrow Club, any of those things, we'll know that you came from DoorGrow, and we're going to give you an offer. So if you do end up signing up, we're going to give you your second month of service for free.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And so yeah, everybody check out Latchel and yeah, it'd be really cool. So now one final question. I saw somebody post that we probably should touch on. A lot of people are using AppFolio, they're using Propertyware, they're using Buildium. How does this connect? How does this relate? Because they're probably concerned with how is this going to work with the property management software?
Yeah. I'll say this is actually the most frustrating question for me that I get, because a lot of these systems are closed off. They have a closed API, which basically means they don't allow other softwares to just like pipe in automatically. So what we have to do, we have an add-on service where our team will manually update your system of record. I will say most of our customers don't actually add that on, because I think what they end up finding is so much of the coordination work and just day-to-day getting pulled out of what you normally do goes away, that it's super easy, maybe 10 minutes in the morning, to just go ahead and update like AppFolio. But we do have customers that opt into that, because we can manually go into your system and update it for you.
Okay. So your team can actually do some of that if they want it.
Yeah.
And in the future, are you guys looking at doing API connections to, I know Propertyware's got some API stuff coming out. Buildium's been integrating with a few partners. Rent Manager has an API.
Yeah. So I'm going to be so happy when Propertyware's new API comes out. But for now, we don't integrate with any existing systems. The one we are looking at is any with completely open APIs, like Rent Manager is one. I believe Rent Tech is another one. We haven't done it yet because most of our customer base is actually on AppFolio, Buildium, and Propertyware. It's interesting, like how I just don't see Rent Manager used as often, which is, it kind of hasn't lit a fire under us yet to do that integration. I do imagine though, at some point in the near future, we'll do integrations with those companies.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, cool. Ethan, thanks again for coming out on the show. And I hope people check you out. And I know you're going to also be at DoorGrow Live.
I will.
And so we're excited to have you there as a vendor. And so people will be able to talk with you and your team in person, I would imagine. So,
yep.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for coming out on the show. And again, go to Latchel, check it out, and then fill out their schedule thing and plug in DoorGrow, and they will and keep us posted on whether you're getting some leads from this. I'd be curious to find out.
Yeah. And honestly, too, if any of your listeners just want to have a conversation about anything we talked about, happy to do that too. So
Yeah, cool.
I'm always open to talk to property managers and entrepreneurs. So
all right, thanks so much, Ethan.
thanks, Jason.
All right, so for those of you that sat through this interview, hopefully you got some really good value. Make sure you join the conversation inside the community in the DoorGrow Club. You can go to doorgrowclub.com, and that will redirect to our Facebook group, to our community, and we would love to see you in there communicating. One of our most active members in there said that he's already gotten added $100,000 to his annual revenue just from ideas that are tossed around for free inside that Facebook group. And so make sure you get inside the DoorGrow Club group, and we will see you in there. And I'm Jason Ho, DoorGrow. Until next time.